Does anyone else remember that H&M designer collaboration worn by Kendall Jenner that had the fashion world in a chokehold? It was a collab with Giambattista Valli that debuted at Cannes in 2019, and they could not keep those little tulle dresses, especially the pink ones, on the shelves. People were buying them up like crazy, and resellers were jacking up the prices at exorbitant rates. Incredibly, they are still selling for a pretty penny today, showing that they've conserved their value pretty darn well, even 6 years on. But why? We've got to remember that ultimately this is H&M, so you can probably expect, well, H&M quality. I decided to find out for myself if these dresses are worth their weight or if they're just fast fashion trash tied up with a bow. I'm also going to show you this gorgeous couture-sewn tulle dress designed by my friend Joe, who is a designer. You can follow him on Instagram, because it's always nice to have something to compare fast fashion to. Without further ado, let's open this baby up. So this is actually not as terrible as I was expecting. Note that my expectations were extremely low. It's a strapless dress, so there are certain elements of construction that you want to have in there in order to ensure that the dress actually stays up. One of those is, of course, a corset. Granted, this is not the world's most beautiful corset. It's made out of what I assume is probably a pretty cheap tulle, like the rest of the dress. And some of these trims are not the nicest in terms of hand feel and appearance, like this trim at the top, for instance. There's also a weird bit of excess fabric at this front panel. I'm not sure why that's there. Could well be a pattern making problem. But anyway, the essentials of a corset, notably boning, are there. You have these pre-made boning casings, which I think makes it look nice and neat. There is boning at the princess lines, so the lines that go through what we call the bust point or the apex in the industry, known to most people as the nipple. There is boning at the sides as well, a little less on the side that has the closure. Interestingly, there's not that much at the back. A higher end dress probably would have more bones. I'll see when I try this on if it makes a difference. In terms of closure, you've got this hook and eye panel closure with a zipper laid over top. The panel has 2 rows of hooks to allow for a bit more flexibility size-wise. In like a really nice high-end corset, especially if it was like a standalone corset, you'd have a busk most likely. This one isn't really going to give you any shaping or stability at all whatsoever, but it's fast fashion, what you gonna do? I also want to draw your attention to these little hooks and eyes right here. This whole ribbon along the inside of the waistband is called a waist stay. This helps hold the weight of the skirt up so that the corset isn't doing all of the work to hold up the dress, and so the skirt isn't pulling the dress down. Last thing I'll say about this whole corset slash bodice area before I compare it to the handmade couture gown. First of all, there's a very ugly seam at center back here. I don't know why it looks like that. The label is also kind of shoddily sewn on. I do like that they put a little bit of bias tape on the zipper tape though. That's a nice touch. And finally, this kind of ugly trim at the top of the dress is quite elastic. This intrigues me because the rest of the corset, and especially the waist area, are not elastic. So I don't know why you'd specifically need elasticity right here. Maybe to accommodate a larger bust or back. I'll see when I try it on what I think of that feature. Alright, time to move on to my friend Joe's gorgeous creation. The bodice of this dress is really intriguing because there is boning in there. I can feel it at the seams, but it cannot be seen at all. It's also very lightweight. There isn't really any bulk anywhere. So clearly he created a very lightweight interconstruction slash corset of sorts that is only attached at the neckline or waist or seams or maybe all of the above. So it is undetectable from the inside and the outside because first of all, you don't see any stitching for the boning either on the inside or the outside. And you also don't feel like you're wearing a corset. I'll have to ask him how he did that. Maybe I'll have to do a standalone video on this dress or some of Joe's other creations. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. Interestingly, this dress does not have a waist stay. However, I would say for this dress, it's probably actually not necessary to have one. This dress was custom designed for a particular person who is very petite. So because this dress is very fitted to the person, including at the waist, and there is good shaping from the interconstruction at the bodice, and you know the person doesn't have a very large chest, and the skirt is not very heavy, you maybe don't need a waist stay quite as much on a dress like this, and in fact it may add unnecessary bulk. Obviously on the Giambattista Valli for H&M dress, it is mass produced, it needs to fit a large number of people, and the design needs to work across the size range. You can't just have a different dress for the larger end of the size range versus a smaller one. Or I mean you could, but that would cost more and just is typically not done. So it makes sense that there was a waist stay in that case, and some extra features like the double row of hooks and eyes and the elastic trim at the top. Now, something that I mentioned but did not fully explain about this dress is that it is made with couture sewing techniques. That means that there's typically a lot of hand sewing involved, and we see that at the zipper here. Joe hand-stitched the zipper in between the bodice lining and the outer fabric by hand. We see the little hand stitches. That does obviously make it more delicate. You need to be careful when you're zipping somebody into a dress like that, especially since you don't have a waist stay or hooks and eyes to take some of that pressure off. What makes this dress truly special compared to the little Kendall Jenner experience, among other things, is the fit. As you can see from photos of me wearing it this summer, it really does fit like a glove. It zips up within an inch of its life, keeping me snatched in there. And frankly, that's the difference between wearing something custom or a really high-end brand that prioritizes good fit compared to something mass-produced. On this H&M number, you can see that's not so much the case. It may be hard to tell, but there is some gaping at the waist. The waistband looks like it's pulling away a bit instead of sitting flush against my body. And this isn't strictly a fit problem, but there is way too much tulle, I think, for my frame. It looks like they just kind of jammed it all in there. I would say also the proportions kind of feel off in general. I'm quite short, so the skirt probably could have been a little bit shorter. Also, this dress is itchy as you know what. I felt like a colony of fleas had taken up residence in my skin when I was wearing it. So I can't say that I would actually recommend wearing it for any length of time. Now, you might have noticed that this dress looks a lot better fitted and more polished on Kendall Jenner than it does on me. Kendall has worn this dress in a few different shades of pink, including the one I have. But not only that, she also wore this really long fancy one to the Ken Amphar Gala in 2019. Obviously, one explanation for why she looks a lot more polished than I do is stylists. There are always stylists involved in these kind of shoots, clearly. I think a lot of people don't really understand or appreciate the artists that stylists are. It's not just, oh, here's a bracelet and a pair of shoes to go with this look, although obviously like having good taste and knowing where to find good pulls are part of the job. But they have a lot of tips and tricks and tools to really help clothing look its best. And furthermore, many of them also sew and are able to quickly alter things on the spot in order to have them look a little bit better for these shoots. Big brands may even have designers or fit technicians on hand for these kind of shoots. I'm not really sure. The other thing is custom looks. Obviously the Ken Amphar Gala look was custom. They weren't selling that, but it's possible that the other dresses she wore for the campaign were as well. I'm not saying they definitely were. H&M definitely could have put Kendall in samples that were made using the same pattern, size chart, materials that they used for the dresses that ended up in stores and online. I think they were selling them both in stores and online. As the dresses they ended up selling, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you what they did. However, when brands have celebrities in an item on a red carpet, for instance, and then they sell something very similar in stores or online, there's a pretty good chance that they made a custom version for the celebrity. A custom version allows you to get the fit right, which obviously makes the garment look better. And then they might also have slightly more elaborate design details or higher end trims or fabrics than the mass-produced versions that they ultimately sell to consumers. We can see that, for instance, with this blue scuba-esque Balenciaga dress worn by Kim Kardashian to the 2022 Vanity Fair Oscars after party, compared to the version that you can purchase, or that you could at the time, which I reviewed in a recent video. Basically, Kim's clearly was a custom version. It fit her perfectly, the train was a lot longer, and there may have been other design differences as well to make it more high-end. Hilariously, two country music singers wore the same dress, the version you can buy online, not the custom version, to the 2022 Country Music Awards. Yes, they both wore the exact same dress to the same event. Both decided that they wanted to reheat Kim's leftovers. And yeah, it just doesn't hit the same. Kim's clearly is custom and received a lot more attention from the brand and the design teams. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Just be aware that when a celebrity is promoting a product that you can buy, what they're wearing may not be exactly the thing that you're able to buy, if that makes sense. Back to the dresses at hand. For those of you sewing and fabric nerds who are still here, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the construction before we wrap things up. So this dress is made of a polyester tulle, which makes sense. Silk tulle is extremely expensive. This dress would be probably thousands of dollars if it were made of that. I think it's kind of smart how they layered it to get that really full hourglass shape without having to just have, you know, uniform layers of tulle every single time. They have a few layers underneath that are just short layers of tulle to give it that fullness in the skirt without having a lot of yardage of fabric. And on some of the outer layers, or at least one of the outer layers, they have gathered a shorter panel of tulle and then sewn it on to kind of have a peplum effect on the skirt, which again helps give it more volume and create that distinct shape. Some things I don't like as much about the construction. There is a lot of tulle packed into the waistband strip, so that is itchy and feels weird and bulky when worn. Some of the seams are not finished that nicely, as I mentioned. Like, ew, what is this? And the waistband doesn't line up here at the side seam, which for the price, I feel like that is a quality control issue that they should not be having. Like, yes, it absolutely is fast fashion. This is H&M after all. However, it's not cheap fast fashion. This is a collaboration with Giambattista Valli after all. So I feel like that side seam should not look like that. I'm going to do a video at some point about this couture-sewn dress and other dresses made by my friend Joe. Again, please go follow him on Instagram to see examples of his beautiful work. But very quickly, this dress has so many hand finishes that are rather lovely. Furthermore, this front panel is made of piña or pineapple silk, which is a luxury textile from the Philippines. It is beautifully embroidered. This hand-sewn gold trim on the sides of the panel is also stunning. And overall, I feel that the silhouette is just more elegant than the Giambattista Valli by H&M dress. The tulle is tooling, it has volume to it, but it's not overbearing. There's a subtle poof while still looking sophisticated, in my opinion. Interestingly, Joe told me that this is a synthetic tulle, so it's not a silk tulle, and I mean, I could have ascertained that just by touching it. But why that interested me is because he said he liked the volume better on the polyester tulle compared to silk. It gave him the shape he wanted for the dress more effortlessly. So I guess that's a good reminder that synthetics sometimes are chosen for design reasons and not merely for price. Although, as you know from watching my videos before, of course, synthetics are still not my preference. I can't wait to interview Joe to learn more about this dress and all the others that he's made. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss that. So now that all is said and done, would I recommend buying this H&M by Giambattista Valli experience? No, I would not recommend it. It is itchy. I don't think it really looks that great on. I think it would need a lot of styling in order to look as cute as it did on Kendall on most other people. So at the end of the day, I just don't think it's worth the price point, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody buy it. Unfortunately, guess who did buy it? Me, to make this video. So I'm the sucker here. I will probably try to sell it at some point, but I'd like to get a few more videos out of it first. And one of those would be comparing it to a full-priced ready-to-wear Giambattista Valli gown. Or even a Giambattista Valli haute couture gown. But that might be hard to come by. Anyway, please subscribe if you don't want to miss these future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.